Hi guys, welcome to another BigLipz podcast. We are on season 2, episode 8 now. So for those of you who don't know, my name's Catherine Reese, joined as always by my good friend Sam Macaulay Blair. A bit of background: we are just two kind of current and former film students. I say that every 2 weeks, but you'd think it would get easier to say, but I think it's getting more difficult. um, so yeah, we just season 1 kind of started. We were talking about films and movies and things, and now we're on to season 2, which is TV. So obviously last week we were talking about Dairy Girls. So this week is not related in any way, but it's something that I wanted to talk about, and it's only really applicable to TV. So I thought this would be the perfect way to talk about it, and that is musical episodes of TV shows, of otherwise not musical TV shows. Um, so as a wee treat, we're going to sing the whole podcast for you. So Sam, no, can you imagine? That would be god
Oh
awful.
God.
On my side, anyway. I haven't heard your singing voice, Sam. I'm sure it's
There's a
lovely.
reason for that.
Yeah, so we'll just jump right in. Sam, what were your kind of initial thoughts when I said that I wanted to talk about musical episodes?
My initial thoughts, to be honest, were twofold. I think first of all, I was like, it's a really great idea for a podcast. Like, I think it makes perfect sense. Like you said, I hadn't even really thought about it until you mentioned it there, but it is something that is just completely specific to TV. You don't really get it with, you don't suddenly get you're not suddenly going to get Harry Potter and the Curse of like the singing muggles. Like you don't really get it with. I doubt you get it on like radio dramas and stuff, and obviously you don't get it with movies. So it is very TV specific. And I wonder what sort of started that actually.
That's a good point. Like, who was the first person to do it, and then someone else watched it and was like, yes. Because there's a lot out there, a lot more than you would think, especially when you don't have a huge
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a weird one because you don't have a huge I think like you were saying when I was initially kind of talking about it, like you don't really think about them normally, like when you're thinking about TV shows, but yeah, they're out there for good or for bad. So did you have any kind of thoughts in particular? Like for me, pretty much it was mostly like dread when I think about musical episodes.
Why?
I just think the ones that I've seen are very embarrassing, and I can feel I feel like I can feel the embarrassment of the cast. Like I would be raging if I went into my work one day and they were like, "You need to sing all day today." By the way, just I know that's not in your contract, and that's not what you signed up for. And I feel like one in particular that I'll talk about later on. I feel like you can just see that the actors are like, oh god, I really don't want to do this, but my manager said I have to. So I feel like the ones that I've seen are all very yeah, just a bit grim. Like the actors don't want to be there. You can tell they don't want to be there. They're not maybe particularly good singers, which is fair because if you sign up for a normal drama, you're not going to be expected. You surely didn't expect to be able to sing. So yeah.
Yeah, very good point actually. I guess I feel like there was a period of time where musical episodes of TV shows were like all the rage, and I think at that point this topic probably would have like had elicited like a different reaction than it does now.
Yeah.
But I feel like now, I guess they're not as common, and also TV has got like I would say better on the whole.
Yeah.
So that it kind of it almost feels not fresh again, but like it does seem like something that would be interesting. And I think it is. It's like you say, something very TV specific. So I think it's a very interesting thing to talk about. My other sort of like the other half of my thinking was just I wish I had more things like more examples to talk about, because I haven't seen tons of like musical episodes. I've only seen like one proper one, I'd say. With another ones that like you could sort of count. But when I was doing research on it, I was kind of surprised that there weren't more. Like I kind of thought there was. I think again because there was a period where they were just like so like in vogue, so everyone was doing them.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think like I think on the whole, I guess it's because I've not seen a lot of them as well. Like if I'd seen more of them, I probably would have a bit more disdain for them because I feel like there probably is a bit of a formula to them, and like you say, some shows get it right. I think I've mostly seen ones that get it right. I don't think I've seen any show that's like done it and it's not been great. And you know, and I can imagine, like you say, like I'm sure some actors love the chance if they can sing. I love the chance to get to show that off. I feel like it's the sort of thing that a show does when it's like, you know, in a comfortable place. It's been running for a while, and they're kind of like looking to spice things up, and probably also just like the actors are all getting very fed up of coming and playing the same characters as often as they are. So they probably want the chance to like show off a little bit.
Definitely, I think it would definitely be a good place, a good way to like almost like blow off some steam, especially if you're maybe doing a more serious show. So yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, it would. I feel like it would be super good fun to like be involved with it.
Yeah.
For me personally, if I wasn't one of the people performing, like behind the scenes would be much more fun. But yeah, I think you're right about when it comes in the show. Like, I think a show would have to be very, very brave to start like episode 3, episode 2 or 3 be a musical episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's maybe once you've kind of established your fan base, you're a few seasons in, that's when you hit it. It's almost like they're, like you're saying, like they're comfortable enough. I don't want to say like they're bored, but it's maybe a nice way to kind of change things up a little bit to avoid it getting a bit stagnant, which I think can happen with especially TV shows because they can go on for so long.
Yeah, I guess it's almost like an easy premise for like an event episode.
Yeah. I feel like one of my issues with them though is that they can be quite, I feel like, gimmicky. I think some of them get it right, but musicals as a whole are like a weird entity in their own right, aren't they? Like, you kind of have to have this suspension of disbelief where people just suddenly start singing and dancing, but it's not like, you know that it's meant to be like real life, but it's not at the same time. You know that these people aren't just singing and dancing.
Yeah, that's kind of the funny thing about them for me is like musicals in general, not so much like musical episodes, but the actual like genre. Because like when I was a kid, I hated musicals. Like I mean, I liked, you know, Disney films, but I feel like they don't really count because they're Disney films. And
it's a genre all to itself.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, when I say musicals, I don't really think of like animated films. I think of like actual live action stuff, and I think, like you say, it was just, yeah, that was the thing that always bothered me was like you just go from there being like a story being told to suddenly everyone stops and starts singing. And it does just like it's a very theatrical thing, but weirdly, since like probably the last like I think La La Land was like the turning point. I remember La La Land coming out. I think that might have been it anyway. I think La La Land was coming out, and I remember like actually being excited about it. And I think part of that was because I'd seen Whiplash and loved that, and it's the same, like it's a director. And I was like, I think I was like, do you know what? I think I watched like the trailer or something for it. I was like, this looks pretty decent. Like I'm actually ready to go in with like, you know, much more understanding of like filmmaking and much more appreciation for filmmaking. And yeah, I think that was the one where I was like, I saw that and I was like, actually, I really dug the songs and stuff, and really dug like the energy and the way it was filmed, and because it's really I think there's like some really impressive like filmmaking on display there, and I think that was when I was suddenly like, it's almost like I now appreciate it more as like a film student and filmmaker, whereas before when I was just like, when I was younger and more of like a casual movie fan, it just, yeah, they weren't really for me.
Yeah, I think as well with the, like, if you go into a musical, 99% of the time you know that it's going to be a musical. There have been times, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but there have been times where I've been caught out watching a movie and thinking, is this a musical? I think Sweeney Todd was one of them actually. But
we talked about that, didn't we, about the fact that it was like marketed to hide the fact it was a musical.
Yep, very funny. But I feel like when you're watching a TV show, especially when it's established and you've already been watching seasons and seasons of it, and then for them to suddenly start singing can be so jarring, which I think is maybe part of the issue with them.
Mm.
Like they need to, it's so jarring that they need to either come up with a gimmick as to why, so that someone's hallucinating or someone's dreaming or there's been an accident or whatever it is. Whereas musicals can get away with them just like singing from the get go. So I think that's maybe one of the like obstacles if you're doing a TV like a musical episode. And on that note, just this is just like a kind of like short little fun question because you're a writer. Would you ever write a musical episode into a TV show?
I genuinely like, if I ever had the talent to, then I genuinely would. Because again, like you say, like it'd be, I think it'd be really fun to work on. I think it'd be a really fun thing to do. I think it'd be a fun exercise to like actually try and like weave. You know, the idea of songwriting doesn't really appeal to me.
Yeah.
But it's almost because like, you know, the songwriting, you could write a song about anything, and there's almost like no framework that I'd be working within. Whereas like if it was for a TV show and you wanted to do a musical episode, I feel like there are certain parameters that you establish that you're going to keep. You have to sort of like write within, and I just think that'd be interesting. And I think I think for me as well, like the visual element of like musical episodes are a big part of like why they work for me. You know, or the potential anyway. Like, you know, well choreographed like musical number or dance sequence does look amazing, and again, just like there's
always
a lot of
does.
energy to it. Yeah, exactly. So that the idea of like doing something like that is genuinely like really appealing. So like again, if I had the talent to do it, again, I have no like actual songwriting experience. So I feel like
You could use already like established songs in theory.
True. Yeah.
It doesn't need to be original songs.
True. Yeah. Plagiarise the hell out of someone else's work.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how that would work. Like, if that's that thing when someone asks you what your favourite movie is or what your favourite song is, and your mind instantly blanks, and you can't think of anything. Imagine if you were trying to write something, you were like, what would be a good song to put in here? Nothing would come.
Yeah.
Like, you'd be stuck there for weeks, and then you would list like the last 5 or 6 songs you'd listen to, and that would just be your whole episode.
I think I would just default to or fall back on making it Christmas episodes and then just using Christmas songs.
100%. I love it. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah, exactly. What about yourself?
I think similar to you, I think it would be more of like an interesting challenge, like a writing challenge, as opposed to something that I would actually be passionate about. But I do think it would be. I think it would be fun. I would probably file it into one of those. Oh, that would be a really fun, interesting like writing challenge that I'll never actually do. It would probably go in that category, but I think, like you're saying, I think it would be easier if you were more kind of like musically inclined, which I'm definitely not. So that's part of the problem. Even like you're a lot more into like music scores than I am. Even down to things like that, I think I would really struggle with it. So I'd probably have to go down the plagiarising route, just stealing people's songs, and then by that point it would be so expensive that there would be no way in hell I'd be able to make it. So
the budget for the series goes on the 1 episode.
100%, that would be me. So yeah, on a similar kind of train, do you think that is a particular maybe time when they should be used? Like we were talking obviously about times within the season or the actual series of the show. Do you think there's a particular time like that it should be used, or do you think there's maybe like a particular event that works well, like we were kind of talking that kind of gimmicky way?
Yeah, I guess now that I've mentioned it, I feel like a Christmas episode is a good excuse because it's already you. It depends on the show, but it does already. I feel like you already can get away with a bit more on like a Christmas episode of anything.
Yeah.
Like they almost like exist tangentially to like the sort of canon of the show, and you kind of expect like I guess there is just like a different vibe, isn't there, and different energy.
Yeah.
I was weirdly getting back into the topic of Christmas content like 6 months after we did that podcast, right in the middle of summer.
I know, I'll need to crack out my Santa hat. I don't know what it is.
maybe an Easter episode.
Yeah.
Doesn't really work as well, does it? No, I mean, like I think I would say it very much depends on the show. and like what like the way that the entry point they have, but I think there should be like a justification for it. I think you kind of it doesn't have to be like you don't need like half a season to set it up. And that, but I think it would just be nice if it felt like if it felt like there was a bit of a reason for it. You know, I guess like one thing with like musicals is funnily enough I was reading just like a chapter on genre the other day, and it talked a lot about musicals and said about how like one of the three main types of musicals is like it's the premise of the musical is they're putting on a show, they're putting on like a musical, and that is like why they will whether it's a movie or a play or like whatever it is that is a musical, whatever the story is, that's kind of like the story's justification for people singing in it. So I feel like you could do something like that. Like I don't know if you've ever seen the show Barry with Bill Hader. Absolutely terrific show. I think the third series is on just now, but I've not seen any of it yet. But binge series 1 and 2 with one of my best friends. And I had a very good time. It's basically like the premise of the show is basically Bill Hader is this like assassin, and he winds up like hiding out in like a sort of like drama school, and he cannot act at all. But obviously he's this like sort of closed off, ruthless like cold blood killer, and he starts opening up to these like actors, and they kind of confuse his like emotional like outpourings as like his acting ability, so they kind of like keep him on, and he like naively sort of thinks that he's getting good at acting, but he also is really just learning to share. But I feel like the whole sort of premise of that, where you have this like it's all set around like them like rehearsing plays and stages and things like that. You could have a musical episode of Barry in theory, because like you could almost write it in and it wouldn't be that difficult. So yeah, I think it very much depends. I think, I don't know, because you could. I was gonna say you wouldn't ever open or close with a musical episode, but I guess you could. Like, I think it would be opening with a musical episode. If you opened a season with like a musical episode, I think it would be a ballsy move, but I think it would be a bit risky just because you would. I mean, I don't think people would really think, oh, the whole season's going to be a musical season, but you would potentially mislead people in that way.
And then you could potentially end up like alienating people, because like you say, there's people who just don't like musicals, they don't get them, they don't enjoy them at all. So if you were excited for a show and then watched it and thought, God, is this a musical, you probably wouldn't go back to it.
Exactly. And I think as well, like, realistically, if we're talking about using them as event episodes in and of themselves, the season's like premiere and its finale usually are already event episodes. They're quite easy to market in that sense, where it's like, I think that's usually why they sit like somewhere in the middle, is because they are quite easy. I think again a finale can work if you're like, some shows don't generate the same hype, that they're enough hype that they would like, or as much hype as they would like for their finales. So I guess it could be used as a nice way to sort of close out the series. But I feel like it almost works better as like a standalone thing. Like if you had like, again, the Christmas episode that isn't like necessarily connected to the main body of the series, because you then again get away with it not really like the episodes on either side of it not like conforming to that like.
Yeah. I feel like that's one of the weird things about musical episodes, because they're so like out there and they're so memorable compared to like the other episodes in the show. It feels like they're something completely different. Like it feels like an exit from the show almost when you get a musical episode, and I think that adds to how kind of jarring it is. And then, as we say, normally it's only just one episode, so they go from like, especially if it's mid-season, obviously they go from normal episodes and then a musical episode and then back to a normal episode. Like it's, but then it wouldn't work if you randomly had 2 or 3 musical episodes like one after the other. It's a very weird like
you do kind of like almost create this hurdle, don't you? I guess like a finale would maybe make a bit more sense the more I think about this, just because like having the whatever episode comes after the musical episode is always going to feel a bit weird.
Series finale could work, because then you'll normally have like a break. And then people will have forgotten that the last episode was everyone singing.
Exactly, yeah. What is it's weird to like come back after like the week after the musical episodes, and you're narratively you're almost just like, So anyway,
100%. Yeah, I think that's part of my issue with them, is because it does definitely feel like, yeah, we had our fun there, back to business. Like, I don't know. I just have a weird kind of. I think they're one of the weirdest things in TV. Like, I wonder if people, because I've written this down. I feel like I've never watched a TV show and thought, do you know what, that plot point would have been amazing had everyone been singing. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, it's funny that, like, and I mean, you've got to give credit to the writers for them to see a plot point or like a narrative arc or whatever, and to be like, do you know what, this can be the point when we make a musical episode. I wonder as well if it starts like long running shows and things like that, whether they start knowing that they're going to do a musical episode, or whether they maybe get particular members of cast come in and they've got a great voice, so they're like, ooh, there's an idea there. Or I don't know, I'd love to just like do like a deep dive into musical episodes to be like, why did you do that?
Yeah, I'd very much bet that I would wager that it changes on like a case by case basis. I think like one of the ones I've seen, I know that it came down to like the creative person involved realizing that like most of the cast could sing, and as a result like wrote a musical episode. But I also fully bet that like there are ones that exist, I guess, like we were saying before, because it's like we're saying, it's getting to like it's like season 5 of this show now, and the ratings aren't quite what they used to be, and we kind of want to drum up some excitement, and the actors are getting a bit bored. There's probably like a lot of like there's probably varies very much, because I guess like I don't know, it depends how. I'm curious now if there's like, obviously shows have like multiple writers and showrunners and stuff like that. I'm curious if it's like more common for musical episodes to be written by like the people who've been on the show for a long time, or if it's just like, and now,
like some
now we
newbies
have
come in.
guest exactly, like a guest writer who comes in, which would make sense. You could easily, like, it would make sense to have like a guest writer come in who actually like maybe has written songs or other musical episodes or musicals. Genuinely curious like what the pattern is there.
There's one of my choices later on is I read was specifically created because one of the cast members had recently won, like, she was cast not long after she won like a Tony Award. So but this was I remember reading that and thinking, God, but she was in it for seasons before they'd had this musical episode. I wonder if she was just biding her time, like just trying to build up more cast members that could sing. I mean, not unsuccessfully, but we'll get to that.
Interesting.
But yeah, I think you've got to give them some credit for having like the gall to just go for it, and for the cast as well. Like, granted, like I'm saying, there's one episode in particular that I'm thinking about where you can see that they're just cringing the entire time. But I feel like when like if you got into it, then fair dues, that's like good for you kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? I think I can't imagine anything worse, personally. But yeah, I'm not an actor or performer in any way, so I feel like I feel like if you enjoyed performing, it would maybe be your thing.
I was gonna say, now that you mentioned it, I wonder if there is an example of, or I wonder if it's been close to them doing a musical episode, and then just like conveniently one of the main characters just isn't in that episode. They just find like some reason that they just don't show up that episode.
Like they're away like visiting their mum or something.
Exactly. And just as a result, they just don't have to. They can just solve that problem.
That would 100% be me if I was in that situation.
Same.
In terms of, kind of similar to that, do you think there's a particular style of TV show, or maybe genre, or even like runtime, like half an hour, 45 minutes, that you think works better with
57 minutes and 52 seconds.
Perfect. Do you know what? That's exactly what I wrote as well.
My God, great mind. No, I don't know actually. I guess I think like more than half an hour, I would say, just because like I mean songs take a while to sing.
Yeah.
And if you are, again, depending on the show, but there's going to be some exposition, isn't there, as to like why the people are singing.
Yeah, and I think I'm not a massive fan of exposition through song, like in a kind of Les Mis type way.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a like Les Mis. I remember seeing that. I've only seen it the one time, seeing it in cinemas, and realizing, and I was like, oh, they just don't ever stop singing.
Yeah, like I'm a fan of musicals. I do enjoy them, but even I was watching that and I was like, oh right, okay, this is a musical.
Yeah, it's I genuinely found it draining. Like I really enjoyed it, but I genuinely found it draining. Like I remember like coming out of it and I was like, I'm sure I'll watch that again someday, but it's gonna take me a while, and it's been 9 years and I've still not rewatched it.
I mean, it's an event. Like it's definitely an event. It's not just one that you can stick on. Like, well, we just put this on in the background.
Yeah, I mean, spoiler alert for Les Mis, because like, was it Hugh Jackman? Is he not like old and like dying at the very end? And I was just like, I'm there with you, mate.
100%.
I haven't been singing. I've just been watching people sing, and I feel like you do.
Yep, 100%. Like I've lived your life with you, Jean Valjean.
Exactly. Oh dear. But yeah, no, I'm with you there. Like I think you do kind of need, like some actual. I feel like you need story around the singing, and you don't want it to just be like song to song. So yeah, I think it. Yeah. I think like you want like at least probably about 45 minutes. An hour probably max. I feel like like shows like Sherlock, which do like an hour and a half. Although I guess if you and I can not that I can ever really see them doing a musical episode of Sherlock. Maybe.
I feel like maybe yeah. I feel like you could get it to work.
They did do a Christmas episode, to be fair. But yeah, I think like I guess the argument against that would be like if you did an episode like that, you could space out the songs a bit more. But I do feel like it maybe, I guess because that almost is a movie at that point, so it does just kind of feel a bit more like it doesn't really work as well. Whereas I think I think like 45 minutes is like the sort of sweet spot for 10 hour 41. What about you?
I think you're right. I think 45 minutes is good, but I think if you were wanting just like, I feel like shows like we've spoken about them before, like The Simpsons and Family Guy, and that they can do it. And they can do it fine because they can just especially with animation like we're talking about. You already don't believe what's happening. You don't think it's real. So when they burst into song, it's fine. Yeah. I think that's more like that would be more like a kind of fun.
I guess Family Guy's like opening credits as well has them all singing. So
yeah, exactly.
And so there's like American Dad as well. So I guess that you do probably and South Park. Now that I think about it. Yeah, so I guess like it's almost like they have like the justification like already ready to go.
Yeah, I feel like it's just more like definitely more of a fun thing. They're not trying to make it gimmicky. It's not. There's no reason for people to start singing. And even things like especially shows like Family Guy and American Dad and things like that, they can get away with saying like, why is everyone singing? Like and it works. But I think sorry, Kyle.
Sorry, just on the Family Guy thread, because I was just gonna say, as much as I like do support that, at the same time, like part of me does have an aversion with Family Guy, just because I remember one of their like running gags that I like could never stand, is when they cut to like, was it Conway Twitty or whatever he's called, and it just cuts to that live action guy, and they just have him play.
It's so long.
Because it's not like they just show a clip. He plays like the full song, and it just every time it like grinds the episode to a halt, and it just like there's just no laughs for that whole time.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely much more of an in joke between all the writers. Yeah. Like I can imagine them properly gutting themselves when they're watching it, and every other person's like, what is happening?
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. Very good point. I think though I've written down here like kind of serious genres tend to maybe have a harder time of trying to incorporate it in. Because obviously if you're sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, like the main ones I had written down were sci-fi, fantasy, and comedy again, because they're all like playing on heightened reality. Whereas,
Yeah.
if you're doing like a gritty crime sort of thriller, then
Yeah, like, can you imagine? I'm trying to think, maybe like Killing Eve, if they started singing, that would be jarring, to say the
yeah,
least. So yeah, I definitely think dramas have a much, or serious genres have a much harder time. Because then they're forced, their hands kind of forced, and they need to make it a dream, or they need to make it someone's hallucinating, or they've got amnesia, or they've been hit over the head, and suddenly they just need to start singing. So I think, like, just from that kind of initial standpoint, if you're writing a serious show and you need, and or you want to do a musical episode, that is like must be one of the kind of toughest hurdles to get over. I feel, whereas if you're doing comedy, even like any kind of comedy, you can kind of explain away a musical. Like, it's just funny. Things happen that are funny, so yeah, you could do it like that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of comedies reset anyway, don't they, after like the run the episode's over, so that you don't have the same thing. Whereas dramas tend to be more like serialized, where the story will kind of flow from one to the other. So it is, you are like having to properly like pull people out of the story, then drop them back, and then like sort of push them back in it.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think. Do you think? So obviously we're talking about like comedies and things. Do you think it works better? Would you, and the ones that you've seen, I don't know if they're comedies or not, but would you say it works better as a comedy?
Yeah, I guess just like with the tone, because I don't think there's like always comedic elements to the the very very few examples I really have. But yeah, I think it's just because there's already that lightness in tone. It's not a tone. I think that's the thing. It's not tonally jarring.
Yeah.
Is like why it kind of works.
I think like because what I was thinking of was obviously we spoke about Derry Girls last time. The kind of last episode had that almost kind of musical number. That was kind of like Orla when she was dancing, and they did their kind of like Irish dancing thing. Would you class that as a musical number?
Not fully, but it is almost like a fever dream of a moment, isn't it? Where like it just happens, and then again like the episode just gets on with itself. It was great. Like I really dug that.
I think the fact that it was Orla as well was perfect, because you're like, if it was going to happen to anyone, and if it did actually happen, of course it would be Orla. And then there's, because it's her, you're like, did it actually happen?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that's a very good example of using like character to justify it. Maybe necessarily more so than, but again we've talked about as well, like does a bit of like, it does sometimes like stretch the the bounds of like reality within like its sort of world. But yeah, I think like I wouldn't say that it fully counts, but it was a really nice moment. And I'd say it doesn't count just because she doesn't like properly
because
sing.
No one's singing.
Yeah, exactly.
I liked it as well because it was very Irish. We spoke obviously last time about comparing it to things like Still Game and things like that. It was a lovely like Irish moment where it was just Irish dancers, and it just felt like, it definitely felt like a lovely like closing moment, even though it was at the start of the episode.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was very very well judged. I think, and I guess that's the big thing, isn't it? Is if you're gonna do something like that, like if you're gonna do a musical episode, it needs to be well judged. Timing is everything.
Yep, of course. Do you kind of on that note, we're moving on to the bulk of the discussion, even though we've had like a 40-minute discussion so far. But at this point I wanted to talk about kind of ones that we've seen, ones that we've maybe heard of. And similar to you, I was actually shocked when I was looking into it that I haven't seen that many either, even though I come up with the topic. And there was a lot, like, you made such a good point when you had said that there was definitely a peak time for them. And I feel like not very many people utilised it. Like, if you were going to do it, you've kind of missed the boat on it now. So yeah, I'm interested to hear. I think I know definitely which one you've 100% seen. But I'm interested to hear what other ones you wanted to talk about.
So one that I had, like, it didn't even occur to me I just was looking at like lists of musical episodes, and it cropped up. Because that was the interesting thing, was like most of the other ones that I've seen, there's one that I've like definitely seen some musical episodes. Some of the other ones just seem to be like, well, they have a song at one point in the episode, so
Yeah.
they're now counted as like a musical episode. Like one that was mentioned was How I Met Your Mother.
There's something about a suit.
Yeah, it's like was it Nothing Suits Me Like a Suit, I think it's the song's called, and they put it in because it's the show's 100th episode, which is like, I think it's a really like nice way to, that makes sense like within the context of, you know, they had something to celebrate, and it's like an interesting way of like celebrating it.
I think it being Neil Patrick Harris as well, he's very like musical. Do you know what I mean? Like he was a very good person to do the song.
Yeah, exactly. Although that being said, I do think, because I just watched How I Met Your Mother all on like Netflix, I binged it in like different chunks. Like I think I had like 3 or 4 different points in my life when like all like a year apart, where I would just like be like, okay, I'm gonna watch some How I Met Your Mother, and just watch like a season and a bit of it straight. Yeah. And I'd be like, okay, I'm kind of burned out on this show. Take a bit of a break and then get back to pick up where I left off next year. And I do think, like, I remember getting to the musical episodes, or the episode with the song in it, and just being like, that was a bit weird. Why did they do that?
I haven't actually watched any of How I Met Your Mother. That's a lie. I've seen some of it, but never like start to finish. So
it's one of the very few comedy shows that I've seen like all the way through. And it's a beast of a show as well. Yeah, I got a lot of love for it. But yeah, I'm pretty sure, because I do remember reading a review for the episode and it mentioning that it was the show's 100th episode. So I feel like, you know, because I definitely didn't read a review for every single episode after watching them.
Yeah.
So I feel like I must have like looked that up just because I was like, I mean, I enjoyed it, but like, why did they do that? And then obviously it was like show's 100th episode, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, there's ones like that, and then one which actually, on the subject of finales, Futurama's initial series finale, like the was a musical episode technically, and like that was one where I remember not really loving that when I was like younger, because I was like 11, 12 years old, I think, when I first discovered Futurama, and kind of like again just like binged it all. But this was in a time before like obviously online.
Yeah, you had to binge it on the telly.
Yeah, well, it wasn't even. Yeah, but it was. So one of my best friends had the DVDs. I don't even think he had all the DVDs to begin with. I think he just had like some of them, and I'm talking like standalone DVDs that had like 4 or 5 episodes on them. So I think he would just come round every now and again and just bring like ones that he had, and as a result, I'd slowly like filled out. So I had this really weird thing where I didn't realise when I saw the last episode of the show, like I didn't realise that I'd seen every episode I had to see.
Yeah.
And then there was this really sad like moment where I was like then hunting through like seasons worth of discs, thinking, oh, there's got to be an episode or something that I've not seen, and then just slowly realising that nope, I have seen all the show has. Obviously they then brought it back, but yeah. I initially didn't love. I mean, I didn't realise it was the show's last episode for a while. Again, because of the way I watched it. I think it wasn't until eventually I went and saved up and I think bought like all 4 seasons on DVD. And I think that was when I was like, okay, oh my god, that's actually the last episode. And I think I appreciated it a lot more when I realised that, because they do use it as like it works quite well as like an ending, just in the sense. I think it's probably the weakest of the endings they gave that show, and they gave it like 4 endings. But I think there is something quite nice about it, because it does obviously. I mean, usually when they need to end the show, they focus on the Fry and Leela stuff. Which makes sense, because it is, you know, Fry is like the main character, and the unrequited love thing is like a really big element of it. So I get why they do it, and I guess it's quite a nice way of exploring it, is by doing like this sort of operatic episodes, and having Robot Devil involved. Is again like it feels like. I mean, Futurama just does some really weird stuff.
Yeah, that's funny as well, because I feel like Robot Devil is one of the best like kind of side kind of recurring characters that they have. So yeah, and I feel like he's always singing, because there's one where Bender's in Robot Hell as well, and they have to, and there's like that whole kind of sing song that they do.
That's a very good point, actually.
Yeah,
so
so
I guess
how niche
they
for
kind of, I know. I mean, it's like the more you think about it, it's a very like it's genius, but it's such a odd side character for them to have.
Yep.
So we're gonna have this character who's the devil, but he's just a robot.
Yeah.
And yeah, also really big into singing.
And I love that he's only the devil for the robots. Like he's not. Very funny.
Yeah, exactly.
But I get what you mean. I think it left it. I think the fact that it wasn't like the ending wasn't really kind of fully closed. I think it worked for, especially when it was picked up again. So it ended up not being a series finale. I think it worked that it was that it wasn't kind of set in stone. That there was this little glimmer of hope, but it wasn't 100% like Fry and Leela are together. But yeah, I didn't the same as you. Well, not the same as you. I didn't know until recently that it was what it like was meant to be a series finale. And I think had I known at the time, because I just kind of watched it as and when it was on the telly, I feel like I would have been disappointed at the time had I known that, like you, had I watched my way through them and then thought, oh, there's nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, and like we were talking about, it's a bold choice for them to do like a musical. Obviously, they sing kind of throughout it periodically, but that one is very like full of songs. Do you know what I mean? Like a musical almost. But yeah, that bold move for them to use that as a series finale.
Yeah, to literally wrap up the whole show at the time. I know, and that's another thing I've never actually like. I know more behind the scenes stuff in Futurama now, but more about like the later seasons, because obviously I've been a fan as the later stuff has been made. So I just have been aware of things as it's been coming out and as it's been done. But I'm curious, like, because a lot of shows don't realise that, because it was cancelled. It wasn't like they were like, well, this is the story that we've told. And we were happy ending it here. It was cancelled, and I do wonder if they knew that was going to be the last episode, if they had any sort of planning, or maybe it might be one of those where they had a different point in the episode run, and they were like, well, actually, now that we need to kind of end the series, we'll end it on this note, because it is a note to end it on, rather than just having like a random episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think those are pretty much the only ones that I like outside. So the Futurama, obviously, How I Met Your Mother, they're pretty much the only episodes that I'm aware of that I've seen that are like musical episodes. Again, unless you're counting like something like The Simpsons, like the monorail episode where they have a song in that, but I don't really feel like that counts.
Yeah.
Obviously, the main one that I've seen, the big one, is Buffy, which will come as no surprise to you. And to be fair, it's such a weird one, because I like basically like it was the first thing I knew about the show, was that there was a musical episode.
Oh really?
It's solely and pretty much like I feel like the musical episode is like such a reputation that exists without the show, and I've had friends and had girlfriends over the years that have been obsessed with Buffy. And this is before I actually watched it, or as I was gradually starting to watch it, and as a result, they would always talk about how amazing the musical episode was. So I had like literal years of hype going into this episode, and it is really good, but it definitely it isn't my favourite episode of Buffy, and I don't mean that as in I don't like it. I mean that as in like it's up there. It's probably like top 5, but it's not my absolute favourite episode of the show. But it might have been, granted, had I not had years and years of hype, and had it.
That's fair.
I think it also takes place, not to spoil anything, but it takes place within like my least favourite series of the show. And there's 2 episodes in that series that I like genuinely love. And it's, funnily enough, it is the musical episode and the episode immediately after, and like pretty much every other episode that season, fair. I didn't really care for. But it's just weird that the 2 good ones were like back to back. There was like a real high for those 2 episodes, and I was like, okay, this season's getting good, and then it was not. But I think one thing
that's amazing.
One thing that it does really well with its musical episodes, and again, this was just like reading online, doing some research for this, because it's mentioned in like a lot of discussions about musical episodes, is that they actually, they used it to pay off, like, in sort of like turn the story. Basically, they use it to actually like have big moments happen between characters, and like, yeah, they actually use it to like pay off and set things up, and it is used cleverly. It's not just used as like the musical episode happens and then they get back to the story they were telling.
Yeah.
They use it to sort of continue and evolve the narrative, which is a difficult thing to do, but I think it does it well. So what about you? What are the ones you've seen?
I think obviously one of the ones was the Futurama episode, which we've spoken about. One I'm ashamed to admit I haven't seen is of course the Buffy episode. But I found it really funny when I was looking up, when I was doing research and things, it frequently was at the top of the list for like musical episodes. And I feel like, obviously my understanding is that there's some kind of like demon or something that comes and it's forcing people to sing. So that's like, I feel like no other show knows what it is the way that Buffy knows what it is. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
like Buffy just knows exactly what kind of show it is, exactly who it's catering for, and it does what it does so well. And I feel like their gimmick, I don't want to say that because I feel like it actually works and it makes sense and it wouldn't be as shocking. Obviously I've not seen it, so it's a bit harder to tell, but yeah, I feel like, and I wanted to watch it before the podcast, I just didn't have time. Yeah.
I would
feel like
say,
one of the
like, hold out until sorry
until you come upon it.
Yeah, because again, yeah, there's like fairly major stuff that happens leading up to it and from it as well.
Yeah, fair. I remember reading one of the reviews. It had said it was singing its praises, but it did say at one point that Sarah Michelle Gellar was like auto-tuned out her nut to make her like a decent singer, which I thought was hilarious but also quite sad.
I know she's incredibly talented as well. Like she can do like so much, but yeah, it's a shame.
Singing's maybe not necessarily one of them. So the one as well that I really wanted to talk about, and this is one that springs to mind when people mention musical episodes, and it's not for a good reason, and that is of course the Grey's Anatomy musical episode, which will go down in infamy.
What season does it happen
in? It's quite late on because I'm not sure. I'd need to check. Maybe season 5, 6. But wow, this. I feel like I would suggest that you watch it, but I feel like you need to see the background of Grey's to fully appreciate it. Yeah. And do you know what I mean? Like it's. I was reading reviews and stuff like that on it, and it has actually like gone down in Grey's kind of legend for being like the musical episode. And I feel like Grey's does such a good job, especially in the earlier seasons, where it has these kind of episodes that are like they're standout episodes. So there's like the bomb episode and the shooter and the ferry boat crash, and all you need to say to like a Grey's fan is, oh, the bomb episode, and people know exactly what you're talking about. And now they've got that with the musical episode, but for an entirely different reason. And for a little bit of background, spoiler alert, basically one of the characters in the show, Callie, one of the doctors, is in a car crash and she goes through the windscreen, right? And the episode starts with a car crash, and or the previous episode ends in the car crash, and the episode starts with, you see Callie, she's out the windscreen, and then the actor who plays Callie is standing kind of to the side and she starts singing, right? And that's how it begins. And I remember watching it at the time, and I kind of watched it as it went on, and she started singing, and I was like, what is happening here? And in fairness to the Sarah Ramirez, they've got an amazing voice. Like, they're the one that won a Tony Award, so they can actually sing, but minus maybe one other person, they're about the only people that can sing. um, and it's a weird episode. Like when I was reading reviews about it, they were talking about how it's not even that it's jarring; it's that it's so ill placed. Like it comes at such an important point, such like a massive cliffhanger. For it then to be randomly a musical just makes it feel like not as dramatic or important anymore. Um,
Yeah.
Especially because it's kind of dotted with these weird upbeat numbers by people who are not in the vicinity of Callie, who's the one that's injured. Like that doesn't make any sense because you're kind of meant to understand that she's singing and people are singing because she's had this accident and this is how she's
Yeah.
coping with it type thing. But then there's scenes where she's in the hospital, and there's scenes out with the hospital, and people are singing. Like,
Yeah, so it kind of just like almost ignores its own justification.
yeah, 100%. And one of my favourite parts is that, so Grey's, I don't know if you've watched any Grey's at all, but there's several songs that are like synonymous with Grey's Anatomy. Like, if you hear that song again, you go back to the bomb episode, or etc. Do you know what I mean? The best part of this episode was that they didn't have their own songs. They were just, like I was saying, using actually like already recorded songs, but they were having the cast sing songs from previous episodes. And somehow that made it so much worse. Like, they were singing songs, and then about 2 minutes into the song, you were like, wait, is that the song that they played during blah? I think it was meant to be like a nice little nod to viewers, like, oh, look, you'll remember this from that episode, but it was just like.
Had the wrong effect, basically.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, I feel like if you say to any Grey's fan, like, have you seen the musical episode, they're going to have strong feelings about it. And that was one of the ones where definitely you could see some of the cast being like, oh, I don't want to do this. I mean, rightly so. There was one character, he's actually a Scottish guy. He's the one who played Tommy in Trainspotting.
Okay.
Do you know who I mean? Kevin McKidd, I think his name is. And whoa.
I can't remember his name, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I was watching clips of it actually for the podcast, and he started singing, and I burst out laughing. Like, that's not the reaction that you want.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
But yeah, I'm sorry to rant on, but I felt like that I needed my moment to.
Oh no, you need to get that off your chest.
I did 100%, and I'm glad that I did.
I mean, again, I've not seen the show. I've not seen Grey's Anatomy at all. But I did watch a masterclass by, I think it's Shonda Rhimes, who created and runs it. So she's talked about mostly talked about like the pilot and stuff like that, and like the earliest, like the start of the show and the conception of it and stuff. So that's kind of like my like only context on Grey's Anatomy. But like you say, it's like a drama, and she, when talking about like how she's like established it and stuff, it was all about like taking it seriously and taking women seriously and having like
and Grey's is quite, there are moments in it that are quite silly, but like in an overly dramatic way. That's what makes them silly, like these ridiculous injuries, and that just took it right over the top into ridiculous proportions. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, it doesn't seem to me the sort of. I think it's just also the location. Like, it just doesn't. Nothing about like a show set there screams musical.
Yeah, it was.
At least not when not when you're taking it seriously.
It was a wild ride. Like, I would recommend to anyone. So on that kind of silly note, this last wee section this was just like, if you could create basically a musical episode for a show, what show would it be? And it could be, my choices are pretty silly, like one of them in particular is very silly, like I just think it would be hilarious. But yeah, do you have any shows that you think either could make it work or that you would want to see maybe?
Again, like I had to think about it, and I had to look as well online because I did some research to try and see if because I was curious if there was any shows that like nearly had musical episodes and didn't. You know, they fell through for one reason or another. I couldn't really find anything. But yeah, it got me looking at just like shows that I thought would be interesting to have one. And again, you kind of do steer towards like comedies. Like one that I saw that I didn't even like think of this. I saw it like mentioned on a list, and I very much agreed with it. Was What We Do in the Shadows.
I've not seen it, but I've seen clips and things like that. I know.
It's absolutely wonderful. It's a great show. I've not seen season 3 to be fair. I think season 4 starts soon. But it is a terrific show, and again, it's so sort of irreverent and tongue in cheek. You can absolutely would be able to just do a musical episode and get away with it. It'd be far from like the craziest thing that's happened on that show. I think that's like a big one. Again, like, funnily enough, I didn't mention Sherlock, other than was mentioning it before, despite being a really big fan of that show. One that I saw mentioned on a list that I thought would be interesting was Elementary, which is almost like the American version of Sherlock.
Oh, how about Lucy Liu?
Yeah, and I watched the first season of that like way back when it first came out, and then kind of fell away from it. I like enjoyed it, but it was like definitely one of those shows that like went on a lot longer than it. And that first season anyway, it felt like there were way more episodes than there needed to be, and not really quite enough. I think it's supposed to get quite good later on, so and maybe the sort of thing that one day I go back to. But I feel like that is one that definitely like it would be an interesting thing to see, just because like again it feels like it would be quite jarring, but I think that show also, even though it does kind of take itself seriously, I guess because of the fact that it's already famously or infamously female Watson and all that, and it was basically taking the established like Sherlock Holmes lore and being like, well, we're twisting it in our own way. So I feel like just with that like in mind, it kind of you could do a musical episode of that, and it's like, okay, well, it kind of works. I think again, like it was not impossible that they could do it with the British Sherlock. Again, that show has like a lot of comedy. In fact, Stephen Moffat, the sort of co-creator and lead writer of it, talks about the fact that in his eyes, Sherlock is a comedy with like dramatic elements in it. So you arguably could, but I think there's just something about like the length of the episodes that make it a bit less appealing. And I think like I said, they did a Christmas. Have you seen Sherlock?
Yeah, I don't think I've seen. Do you know what? I think I've only got like one episode left or something. And I couldn't tell you why I've left it. I do remember leaving it on like a massive cliffhanger, and I don't know why I never went back. I think I was nervous.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I feel like. Sorry?
I was going to say, you seen the Christmas episode then?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that I didn't. I mean, I liked when it basically obviously because they start off with it being like it's just a Victorian episode, and then they kind of like try to cleverly like explain it as like it's in his like mind palace, and but I feel like that the episodes. I feel like that was actually it got a lot interesting when they started spending a lot of time, because that's kind of like the episode doesn't really wrap up, it just kind of hits you with this big twist that then milks for all it's worth. Where it's like, now we're going to explain like how we justified the victory, and that was to me quite annoying, because it's like it actually was way more interesting when you were, everyone was on board with you just doing a Victorian episode. You didn't actually need
we were behind it.
And I kind of wish that they had just done it and left it alone, because then I could maybe see them doing a musical episode and just leaving it alone. But now I feel like they would have to find some way to no, he was using it to solve a crime.
Do you know what? I was just sitting there thinking there, like, I wonder what they could do. Like, maybe it could be some sort of toxin in the air that, like for some reason makes you start singing.
Exactly. And one I think that I guess like Joss Whedon shows are ones that like do feel like tonally right for musical numbers, but that's just very much his sort of like his sort of writing style and his short shows style. They all do sort of have that campy, irreverent sort of attitude as well. So I feel like they work. And then there's I guess probably the biggest one that I am like almost like genuinely surprised that it's never had a musical episode is Doctor Who.
Oh
Because
yeah.
like, you know, for a show that's gone on for like coming up on 60 years, and
And
like
there are some ridiculous episodes in that show. Like
exactly.
I'm not a fan of Doctor Who. I've seen some episodes. I watched episodes for like a television module that I was doing actually in uni, and there was one with dinosaurs. I've seen that one. That
I've
was pretty ridiculous.
yeah.
I feel like you could Doctor Who. Yeah, it's such a good shout. Like it's ripe for just a bizarre musical number.
Yeah, and again, it seems like such an obvious. I think it almost feels like it's too obvious
Mm.
for them to have done. I think there was talk about it when I think it was when Matt Smith was the Doctor. I think that was about 10 years ago. I think that was like around the time of like he was the Doctor when it was like when Glee was on, and everyone was like you know, musical episodes were like the thing, and I think there was a lot of talk of it, and I think he was asked in interviews and stuff. I think Matt Smith was very up for it, because I remember him also saying he wanted them to do a live episode.
All right,
Which
that was a fad for a thing as well. Do you remember with like soaps for some
yeah,
reason?
yeah, and yeah, he wanted to get on that, and I remember like everyone was like, I think both of those ideas were just kind of shot down. I think the musical thing didn't happen almost because it was too obvious at the time, and everyone was doing them, and I think they kind of just didn't want to. They didn't want to. If they'd had the idea before, I think if it got really big, they would have done it. But I think because once they, you know, once everyone started doing them, I think they just didn't want to be another show that was doing it, because it seems a bit like desperate if you're also doing it.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe why they didn't. But the live episode thing, yeah, I mean that's a whole other discussion. But that is an interesting idea on paper, but for a show that like so heavily features special effects, I have no idea how you could possibly do that.
I can't even imagine the poor like crew. Can you imagine how stressed you would be? Like you're stressful enough
Oh
shooting
no.
something that's pre-recorded. Do you know what I mean?
Well, funnily enough, they did for the fifth. So I follow Stephen Moffat on Instagram, and he was obviously running the show. He ran Doctor Who as well for a good while, and he ran it when he ran it 10 years ago when it was coming up to the 50th anniversary. And they did, as one of like the sort of many ways of like celebrating the 50th anniversary, after they broadcast the anniversary special, they did this live like interviewee sort of like you know, they had like loads of guest stars and an audience, and they all like discussed the show and the episode, and but there was this really weird thing where on like coming up to the 50th anniversary, like the date of like the anniversary, One Direction had just decided to claim as 1D Day. It was really
That's
really
amazing.
bizarre. So rather than, you know, like go against it, the BBC decided to for whatever reason to like embrace it, and as part of like this Doctor Who live show, they had like a live link up with like Stephen Moffat, John Hurt, someone else, and One Direction, and the connection was really unstable, and I
Oh
think
no.
I think as well because like Stephen Moffat's Scottish, he's from Paisley. I think he couldn't really understand what he was saying at points, because I'm pretty sure like there's points where he makes a joke or asks a question, and there would be like the longest pause, and then they would just
Oh
answer
no.
something clearly off, and like there's literally a moment in the live like show where like Stephen Moffat just like literally his like face just falls into his hands, and I think every year on like the anniversary, the Doctor Who anniversary, he just posts the like screenshot of him like from
That's
that,
amazing.
and he's just
What a
like
poor
just a
guy.
reminder. Yeah, just a reminder that I was running the show and this happened.
That's hilarious. I
But
love that the BBC didn't back down or didn't stand up for Doctor Who. Like, no, sorry, it's 1D Day.
yeah, well, okay, if you say it is, then I guess it is.
Yeah, exactly. Oh.
What
No,
about you?
I was thinking kind of, obviously you've mentioned Glee. I feel like American Horror Story is ready
Oh,
for a musical
absolutely.
season.
Yeah.
I mean, Glee wasn't. That's a discussion for another day. But Ryan Murphy has proven that he knows how to do a musical show. He's even like, there's several instances where he kept getting Jessica Lange to sing. Like I feel like you
Ah,
could,
yeah.
when it was at its
Season
peak.
2 has like, was it the name game?
The Name
The
Game, yep.
this
She
the
sings in
yeah.
season 4 as well. There's that weird Stevie Nicks thing in Coven that we've spoken about.
Yeah. That is really odd. Yeah, it
Um,
is. They are like flirting with it, aren't they? But they should. You're right. They should totally embrace it and just do a musical season.
100%. And I feel like when they were at peak, when it was kind of Jessica Lange, Sarah Paulson, Evan Peters, that kind of main crew, I feel like would be perfect for. And I genuinely think that they could manage a whole season as a musical, and it would be really. I can't off the top of my head think of a musical horror, so I feel like it would be pretty
I think
fresh.
something
It
like
could be,
Buffy is maybe the closest
yeah.
you get, where like because there's horror elements to it, but yeah, like there's not. Yeah, because I was thinking again when I was thinking in the lead up to this about the fact that like, you know, usually what you get with musicals are they're like romantic basically, aren't they? They're usually
Yeah.
anyway like, and I think it's because like it almost like explains the singing. It makes sense. You're singing to or about someone. It's you have like you kind of have like the perfect sort of like setup there of like a dynamic and like foil and stuff, and also you know music is romantic and singing is romantic in a sort of like classical sort of way.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's probably why you don't get horror, because horror is a lot of like, you know, silence and listening to like you know doors creaking, things moving slowly.
Yeah.
So like and like low lighting and stuff. But I definitely think like yeah, horror musical is like there's got to be a great one. Like
There's
just waiting to be
gap in
made.
the market. Like, do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I feel like kind of like we were talking about Buffy, like American Horror Story, I think knows that it's a little bit like campy and things like that. So I feel like it would fully embrace the kind of musical vibe, and it would be very musically, and I think it would be so good. So I'm sure Ryan Murphy's watching, so if you could go on that, that'd be perfect. And the last one I wanted to mention is just for absolute silliness, and it's purely because I'm watching it at the moment, and that is The Walking Dead. Can you imagine?
Oh, I would be back on The Walking Dead
Yes.
if they did a musical
you
episode.
imagine? I feel like Rick would be right into it. He'd be strutting about. He'd be like twirling everyone. I feel like it would be the funniest thing ever. And if you managed to get Daryl singing, I feel like it would just. And I feel like the show. And this is purely out of nastiness that I said this, because I feel like the show thinks it's a lot better than it is. Again, that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
But I feel like it would do a musical
agree.
episode. It would do a musical episode thinking it was really like cool and smart and clever, but really it would just be laughable. And I feel
Yeah.
like that would be something I would 100% be behind.
It would be just like the most watchable thing.
Yes.
And like all the worst ways, I would be so down for that.
Yeah. Oh god. I don't even know. I'm sure they could manage to. Yeah, you could manage to incorporate zombies in somewhere like.
Oh, they'd be like the chorus, basically the backup singers. Like,
God, yes.
so I mean, it's perfect. Like.
It is perfect. They could just be in the background, and they kind of already move in sync, so you could just
Exactly. Like, oh, it'd be great.
would
That's how
be.
the Walking Dead comes back.
Exactly. That's like series finale. It was all a dream. Imagine that. Imagine that it was like this crazy musical number at the end, and then the very last minute of the episode is like Rick waking up in the hospital after having been shot, and everything was just fake. That would be very funny, actually. I think I would die laughing.
Actually, it genuinely would be like, because just like how ridiculously like drawn out the show is, and having like multiple spin-offs as well.
Yes.
Like, it would be like the perfect payoff.
Oh, if only they would let fans write the shows. Oh god, that'd be so good.
It's time. Exactly.
But yeah, no, on that silly note, I think we can call it a day. But thank you again, Sam, for joining me. It's a pleasure as always.
Thank you.
And
that was a lovely discussion.
yeah, I apologise for putting the fear into you when I suggested musical episodes.
Yeah, no, that my heart did definitely skip a few beats there.
But no, it was really interesting. I think you made some super good points. Like it's a weird thing to do in episode in TV. I feel, but there's no way else you could do it than TV. So yeah, I feel like it definitely deserves its own podcast. So thank you again.
Right.
And then next time, Sam, will be your turn again.
I know, and yeah, interestingly enough as well, we'll be discussing a show that has musical numbers in it as well.
Ooh. We're just keep tying it all in.
Exactly. Nothing if not consistent.
Exactly. But no, yep, thank you again, Sam, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Farewell.
See ya.